Daryl, we were, as I said to you before we came on, we were debating playing in some music with a Dylan song, but I was worried that the recording might get pulled for copyright. And normally, as I was saying to you, Daryl, normally I'm off tomorrow. So if on another occasion I would risk it getting pulled and then just edit it out and re-upload it and it was worth it. But I won't have a chance to do it tomorrow, so I couldn't take the risk. But just before I give the formal intro, it'd be good to know in the chat, folks, what Dylan song you would have recommended I open with, seeing as we're here tasting his whiskey. In the meantime, folks, for those of you joining us, and I can see a few people in there who are joining us for the first time. My name's Luke. I'm the W Club manager. I can actually see the participant numbers tipping up, so there's still a few people joining. So my name's Luke. I'm the W Club manager here at the whiskey shop. We thank you for joining the Digital Drams. We do these try and do them every couple of weeks, although not super consistent all the time. Depends on the kind of releases and brands and what's happening in the world. But we try in that. We want these to be super engaging. So do get your questions and comments and tasting notes in the chat. And yeah, at the very end, we'll be giving you a discount code that'll give you 15% off all the whiskies we've sampled tonight, and the whiskey liqueur or the old fashioned, whatever, you know. They're obviously not all whiskies tonight. Speaking of whiskey liqueur, Daryl, would you like to introduce the order we're going to go in? I know some people like to pre-pour and get them in front of them of the whiskies we have here, and then maybe give a bit of an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, so if you can see behind me, I've got them in order the way we're going to go through. We are going to start with the bourbon. We're going to go to the rye, the double barrel, the 10-year, and we're going to finish with desserts at the end. So we're going to finish with the rock and rye. But yeah, a little bit about myself. I've worked in booze for a number of years. I've worked brand and bar side. I started my brand work, helped the Haymans launch the gin distillery in Balham with the experiential offering. I've worked for Bruichladdich, Westland Whisky, Remy Cointreau, Cognac. I mean, most of this shelf over here is Laddie. I think we've got some Cognac, we've got some Westland up there and some Mount Gay. So I'm fairly versed in drinking. I don't discriminate. I drink everything. And I'm quite passionate about oh, someone said hi, I met Hannah from Campari last night, and she said, oh great, I used to work with Hannah and she's wicked. She also likes to drink. I'm just reading the chat now, but yes, yeah, I work for numerous brands, and now I work for Paragon. They're a distributor based in Manchester. We have a kind of massive portfolio. I specifically work on Heaven's Door and Stolen X, so the whiskey liqueur, but I dip my toes in. We've got a couple of Irish whiskies, Dingle, you probably had before or heard of, and McConnell's, who's just launched their distillery in Belfast. And we've got a French single malt as well. So plenty of whiskey, plenty of drams. Hopefully that was a heavy enough intro for you.
Marvelous, yeah. Well, I mean, Dingle is one of my local distilleries from County Kerry myself. So I remember a big day for the parish when that opened. But yeah, that's fantastic. Marvelous. Well, we'll. I mean, obviously, this is a momentous whiskey or day for whiskey tasting. Obviously, it's great to be tasting a bourbon on the 4th of July, but also election day in the UK. So I suppose we all need a drink. Yeah, will we get started on the bourbon, maybe, Daryl?
Yeah, let me just share my screen again. I've got plenty of notes about everything. Now, where is it? With the tasting, of course, I want to keep it as informal as possible. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. The information's on the screen, so if you want to look at it later, you can. I'm going to hit the top notes for this. But we're going to start with the Tennessee bourbon, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the brand. Luckily enough, the guys in the States were kind enough to send me a video from the distillery, and they've personalized it for you. They said hello to you guys, because the distillery's only just finished. So it's a brand new distillery. So they sent us a video for you guys, and then we'll taste the rest of the whiskeys and we'll finish on dessert. All right. So the Tennessee straight bourbon. So just quickly a run through of what a Tennessee bourbon means. So some of you are probably familiar that Tennessee whiskey, or have seen it before, it's almost its own protected appellation. Similar to bourbon, very similar to bourbon. But the main difference is Tennessee whiskey will go through a process called the Lincoln County process. So it's a way of filtering through maple wood, and they say it mellows whiskey. So because this is a Tennessee bourbon, it hasn't gone through that process. So bourbon can be made anywhere in the US. I think a lot of people think it needs to be in Kentucky, but it can be made anywhere in the US. About the liquid itself, so the mash bill you can see on the screen: 70% corn, 22 rye, 8% barley. I do have them here. I always carry some corn around with me. Now, this isn't actually corn from the distillery. I got it off Amazon. I use it for my tastings. I mean, people know sweet corn, but they don't often see it in this kind of like almost dried form. Rye and corn we know for being kind of the sweet element in whiskey, in especially American whiskey. Rye, the spicy element, and barley. Dare I say it, barley. I mean, we get some great cereal notes from it, but for the most part, it's often used as a token gesture in American whiskey, more so because it's got a certain enzyme that helps the fermentation process. So, I mean, again, I don't want to teach you to suck eggs, but I was lucky enough to do WSET, and I'm sure, Luke, you probably have done it as well.
I have, yeah.
So the Wines and Spirits Education Trust, they literally sit in a classroom and drink. It's fantastic. But the way I was taught, again, this is not to say it's the definitive way, but it's a good way to kind of approach spirits. Now, always look at it first. What do you know looking at it? It's got color, so we can assume it's been in a barrel, or you've added color. Now, with bourbon, you're not allowed to add E150A or caramel. Now, caramel is approved by the Scotch Association, so people can add caramel to Scotch, but they're not allowed to add it to bourbon. Okay, so what you get is from the barrel, which is quite important. Now, bourbons don't necessarily tend to age, you don't tend to find old ones really, kind of to the max end. I've seen 18 and 20 years, but they're few and far between because it's a lot hotter. You don't need to age it for as long, but the sweet spot's about six to 8 years, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it's got a slight amber hue, kind of reminiscent of that kind of age. Again, if you give it a delicate swirl, if you do that, you're going to agitate the spirit. You're going to get plenty of booze up your nose. So I always kind of recommend, if you do agitate it a lot, just let it sit for a bit. I like to do what my partner calls it the Tinder swipe. Maybe she's trying to tell me something. We used to call it the drive-by or the Kingsway. You stick your little pinky out. About preparing your senses, wafting it in front of your face. The idea being that I can only assume this is your first neat spirit of the day. Maybe not for Kevin. He's had a couple. But yeah, it's all about acclimatizing yourself to it. Because at the end of the day, you know, alcohol is a poison. Okay, so if you throw your nose straight in, it might be too warm.
That's one way to sell it to us.
Yeah. But yeah, also the most sciencey element of it. So your lightest molecular structures are your citrusy notes. So most volatile. So we tend to smell them at the top, and your heavier aromas, your vanilla, your caramels towards the bottom of the glass. So I mean, what do you guys get on the nose? I mean, that's a great way to start. Hopefully, it smells like whiskey.
Yeah, you get lots of. I mean, I get lots of that vanilla, honey, that kind of some of those classic bourbon notes, slightly oaky. It'd be interesting to see what you think, folks, in the chat there. Did you say, Darryl, what people are getting their tasting notes in the chat? There's a minimum aging is obviously different as well. Is it no minimum age or is it 2? I can't remember.
So there's no minimum aging for bourbon. Now there is a minimum aging for straight bourbon, which is 2 years. Any bourbon under 4 years has to have an age statement. Now, unlike Scotch, age isn't as important to the Americans, so not everything has an age statement. And I know, and again, it's I suppose opinions and themes are changing with Scotch as well. You know, people are going against the grain and not having age statements as frequently. But yeah, it is difficult. There is a minefield, especially when you look at how some brands get around certain things and label things the way they are. It can get confusing, but yeah, it's quite a broad kind of category. It's not as regulated as cognac, but not as loose as rum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you were mentioning about the aged whiskies. I mean, obviously you do, you know, I think I was drinking Michter's 25 the other night, and there's obviously the Pappies. So they
Yeah,
obviously they do, but you're as you're right, as you said, they're far and few between, and obviously the climate, but also the fact that it's virgin oak, you know, that it's going to be quite intense. I mean, I've had some young virgin oak Scotch and Irish whiskies, and even them, they're like, oof, I wouldn't age this much longer. So
yeah.
that's going to play a role as well. We've got some interesting comments in there. Russ says very much vanilla and caramel notes, very sweet on the nose. Kevin says I'm getting a nose evocative of a log cabin, sweet resin and honey with some
Oh,
gentle spice.
stop it. You're romancing me, Kevin. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's poetry.
I think
Um,
I'm getting the back aisle of B&Q.
that's definitely home base.
Oh, well,
Um,
maybe home base. Yeah, sorry. Geez, that's I'm out of practice here. That's bad for me.
um, but I mean, the beautiful thing, again, we're taught at WSET is no two people will nose and taste exactly the same. I've been to far too many stuffy tastings in hotel bars where people tell you you have to smell this, you have to taste this. And in actuality, I used to do a super taster test. So there's a piece of litmus paper, and at the end there's a bitter flavor. That bitter flavor, they say 1 in 10 will taste it, and you're a super taster. I used to give it to 20 people. 18 people would be like, oh, that's just wet paper. Like, what is it? And then 2 people would be like, oh, that's disgusting. It's really bitter. But it's just to show we all taste different. Like coriander leaf, for example.
Mm.
Some people taste soap. It's a genetic thing. It just means they're special. But yeah, we all taste different. So again, like I want people to enjoy the things the way they like to enjoy them in that sense. And if you're smelling like honey, fantastic. If you are smelling bananas, even go for it. I'm not, but you might. Okay. Whenever we see an unidentifiable liquid in a glass, we're trying to recall it from memory. And when they teach you at booze school, my teacher is fantastic. We had a bottle of wine and it said apricots. We cut open an apricot, we smell the apricot, smell the wine, and we build connotation. So if you're unsure of things, maybe read some of the tasting notes and find those elements and kind of pick them apart in that sense.
It's
So to
also
taste
how our brain works. You know, we don't just take in the world in terms of as you know, as sensory beings and just that's it. You know, it's a two-way street where we're projecting our own. That's why you see faces and things that aren't there, like Jesus in your toast or whatever. It's also why these things evoke such memories when you do smell them. It's yeah, the So yeah, this is also why you know music and bourbon go so well together. And while I agree with your point about you know everyone tastes smells differently, and you if you get something that someone else doesn't get or vice versa, don't worry about it. But if you're smelling toast, folks, if you're watching this and smelling toast, call your GP or the NHS. Do not, you know, you should not be getting toast from your whiskey.
yeah, not at this stage anyway. But yeah, to taste, guys, if you haven't already, I mean, yeah, I was always taught to go for a little sip first. The first sip's gonna be quite warming. Give yourself a few seconds, wash it around your cheeks with a little bit, get a little bit dilution with your saliva, and knock it back. I mean, you could treat this as a tequila shot with spoons on a Friday evening if you really wanted. Do it in one. It's entirely up to you. But I think my nose and the palate are very similar. Sometimes they're so far removed, but I do think this is a non-linear whiskey in the sense that it like every sip has an evolution of flavor, or it takes you on or maybe a different step or a different path. Some spirits, and not just bourbons, will give you all of their flavors in the first sip. And I do think there's a slight evolution in flavor from this. There is complexity to it. It's smooth and sweet on the tongue. I go with cinnamon, nutmeg for sure. Yeah, 100%. It's weird, like, because we're not allowed to add sugar to bourbon, and they are sweet. And that's all from barrel. And that's so fascinating. You know, when I was a child drinking a certain other whiskey from Tennessee in the parks, and you know we're thinking, oh, this is so sweet. But yeah, it's it's perceived sweetness, I suppose, in that sense. You will get residual sugar from the barrel, but those flavor compounds, vanillin, will give your or tell your brain it's going to be sweet in that sense. Curry sauce on a naan bread loaded with raisins for me. I love that, Mel.
Mel's always cracking tasting notes. I must say.
I absolutely love that. Almond in the background. Actually, I'll go with that. Another one that I picked up quite recently, and I was drinking it in the sunshine, and maybe it was whatever was going on around me, but I did get a slight note of like Parma Violet, slight floral note to it. But maybe that was just that one sitting. It was for my breakfast. You know, I do have a breakfast whiskey. I don't know about you, Luke.
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day. But yes, what I'll do, guys, I'll let you kind of sip away at that. I'll tell you a little bit about the brand. I'll show you this presentation. Again, I'll go through it quite slowly. I'm going to hit the main points, but obviously you can go back and read it later if you want. So, if I can, oh, there we go. So just a quick overview of Heaven's Door. So Heaven's Door was actually co-founded by a guy called Marc Bushala and Bob Dylan. Now, Marc Bushala, he is a serial entrepreneur. In 2014, he just sold his business, Angel's Envy Bourbon. Some of you might have seen that before. And he sold it to Bacardi. Now, he made millions. Now, instead of like putting his feet up in the Bahamas and relaxing, as any serial entrepreneur would do, he reinvested into barrels. Now, he noticed that Bob Dylan had trademarked the word bootleg whiskey. Now, bootleg whiskey to him had connotations of moonshine, so he didn't necessarily love it, but he loved the story. Bob Dylan's never put his name to anything apart from his music, his artwork, but he's never had kind of a product in that sense. So he fangirled him for many years. He turned up at all of his shows. He was emailing management company. And it wasn't until 2018 that they finally got together and started this brand. So in terms of kind of the idea being that, you know, Bob Dylan's so artistic, and they wanted each whiskey to represent kind of the different moods and flavors and times. If there's a famous quote about Bob Dylan that he's never played the same song twice, in the sense that there'll be different keys, there'll be extra verses, different choruses, extra chords, and that's part of the charm of the whiskey. It's all about, you know, this ever evolving kind of piece, and hopefully we get some really creative expressions towards, you know, as we go through. So basically, when I started with these guys in November. So Paragon Brands had just taken distribution of it. I was brought on because I knew the London on-trade, so the pubs and bars and the groups, and I knew booze. I didn't know a huge amount about Bob Dylan, I'll be completely honest. I was a greatest hits fans. Hurricane was my favorite Bob Dylan song. So yeah, it's only like deep diving and looking into it. I didn't realize he was probably one of like the sickest artists going. He's so good. Considering the guy's 83 or 84, he's pumping out artwork I could never achieve in my life. Not only does he do artwork, he also does these amazing iron structures or gates. He's got an ironworks in California called Buffalo Ironworks. And if you look at the bottles, each label has one of those designs on. So it's kind of building that kind of synergy between the two. So, I mean, again, I put this slide in because I appreciate a lot of you are possibly Scotch drinkers for the most part. And this is just essentially a slide to tell you what bourbon is. Again, I appreciate we might be at all different levels, and we've touched on some of these points before, but the main things bourbon-wise, you have to be at least 51% corn, to be made anywhere in the US. Again, a lot of people think it has to be in Kentucky. You can't distill it over 80% ABV, has to go into a barrel at 62.5 or below, and you can't bottle it under 40. So that's kind of, and it has to be in obviously American oak or charred American oak. And that's kind of the greatest hits of bourbon. And obviously, when we go to other expressions like ryes or blends, they can be slightly different, but this is bourbon. All right. Did you guys have any questions on that so far?
Yeah, well, I suppose the one thing that jumps out for me, I don't know if anyone else has a chat coming in. There is a message popped up there. Alex has asked why the ABV is so low. I don't know if that's in general or on in terms of the bottled at 80 proof, 40% ABV.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you distill it higher than 80, you're removing flavor. Which you want to try and keep it. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people will go a lot lower than 80% when they're distilling. I mean, bottling at 40, and that's a minimum. I mean, a lot of people bottle a lot higher. Going into a barrel, I suppose it's to do with angel share and evaporation. Any higher, and you can interfere with that. It's very hot. But yeah, I mean, these are all minimums or maximums. So yeah, there's lots of variation what it is. Have I been told specifically what ours is? Of course I haven't. But it's something, hopefully I'll find out for you. But yeah, this is just a guide. Again, every distillery, and that's part of, artisanal spirits, everyone does it slightly differently. Foam bananas on the nose. I saw that. Delicious. Right.
I think it might be a good time, Daryl, to maybe come on to the straight rye now if you want. Just conscious we're about 25 minutes in. For anyone who's wondering, this the bourbon, the straight bourbon is £71 on the website, but it's £60 35 pence after the discount.
Sorry, didn't mean to do that.
That's all right. So yeah, £71 with 60.35 after the discount, which the code rush be given out at the end. A cracking whiskey. I have a couple of questions of my own, Dara, but I don't know if it's best to, if maybe we wait until after we've tasted this whiskey or watch this video. Which one do you want to do first?
I'll tell you what, let's get through fermentation just because it's here. I mean, it's only some brief videos. So I spoke with the guys in the States, basically because a lot of the liquid in these bottles for launch was sourced. So NDAs have been signed. We didn't know which distilleries has made it. We have only just finished our distillery. So there's very little material or marketing material about the distillery. So I messaged the brand ambassador in America and he sent over some videos from the distillery. I only got them yesterday, so I had to frantically put them into a presentation. But it's literally a 2-day fermentation process, and it's just some videos of it bubbling away. But day one, like relatively calm. It's just a walk through the fermenters. And then we have day 2, where absolutely that's Flavor Town. That is absolutely Flavor Town. So yeah, should we crack on with the next whiskey? Oh, stop. So I'll get this up here for you. So we're going to move on to the rye now. So this is a straight rye. Now the mash bill for this is 95% rye, 5% barley. So rye, obviously, we know for being very spicy. 5% barley, again, more so to help kind of that fermentation process. Now, this rye is finished in French oak. They always say seasonally, that's usually 6 to 12 months. And the reason being that French oak, unlike American oak, is a lot more porous. So you get a lot more kind of interaction. Now, the barrels are often nicknamed cigar barrels, not because they have tobacco in them, but because they're long and thin, so you get more wood contact. So the idea being, with rye whiskey that we know for being very spicy, this one is on the lighter end of rye whiskey. So I find rye whiskey so divisive. So when I tell people about it, it's on the lighter end. Think of tropical fruit, maybe charred pineapple, banana. Someone earlier said to me, like this is something I just want to mainline straight into my veins, which I absolutely loved. You can use that. But what do you guys get on the nose?
Well, Mel gets cinnamon brown sugar and peanut butter after a long taste.
Yeah,
I've never actually got this before on a rye whiskey, so I promise that it's not a suggestive type thing because I love we've
mm.
spoken about a lot of the W Club members on here who come on regularly know my draw for rye, but I actually get rye Vita biscuit,
Yeah,
cakes on the nose, and I've never got that off a rye whiskey before. I think it's interesting. Be good to know everyone else's tasting notes. While people are popping in some tasting notes in there. You mentioned obviously that these were sourced whiskies because the distillery opened this year, and you
yeah.
don't have any idea where they came from or what were they
I do.
Kentucky, were they Tennessee?
I have a very strong idea
Okay,
of
right.
where they came from. So yeah, so one of the snippets of information I had from the bourbon, the Tennessee bourbon. I mean, there's probably two big businesses in that part of America that could probably do it on scale and would have the barrels. Um, One of which rhymes with nickel. I don't know if you got that, Dickel. But one of the snippets of information was it was stored in a single story rick house. And I think they're the only distillery in Tennessee that have one. So, but I don't know for sure. NDAs have been signed.
Interesting. I
And
did a
the
tasting
rye,
with Heaven's Door. Well, actually, I can't remember. It might have been a different bourbon brand, so maybe I'm
mm,
totally wrong. But I did a couple of bourbon tastings back during COVID, and I thought there was there not a contract distillery, like a cooperative owned distillery in Tennessee that were producing a chunk of the whiskey?
quite possibly, but we don't know.
Yeah,
I know. I just like so the information has never been passed down, and it's usually very vague. And yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult coming from working with Bruichladdich, which are all about transparency
Hmm.
and making sure you know where the temperature of the toilets in the distillery, to coming to NDA signed liquid, which again is very common in the US. Like a lot of people do it. Yes, Tony, we're on the straight right now. But yeah, I've chances are it could be from multiple distilleries.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a problem even if brand wants to be transparent. If the NDAs comes from the liquid supplier, there's not much you can do. I know that's the case with a lot of Irish whiskey, third party
yeah,
Irish whiskey.
yeah.
You said you had a hunch where the rye was coming from?
There's only one big producer of
Ah,
rye. It's probably MGP, I think. I think, but I don't know for sure. I mean, it could have come from a smaller supplier, but we just don't know. We just don't know. With the distillery being finished now, they actually finished in 2018. They were laying down liquid, and it'll be blended. We'll start blending it in now. So yeah, we will still have a Tennessee bourbon going forwards, even though the distillery is in Kentucky. So that will still be sourced, but we have launched a Kentucky bourbon in the States that is coming to the UK the end of this year. So we're one of very few brands, if not the first brand, to have a Tennessee and Kentucky bourbon in their portfolio, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, what do we get on the palate if we haven't already enjoyed the rye?
well, we got Tony says, Kevin says I'm getting something quite citrusy, maybe charred lemon and something nutty, maybe almond.
Yeah,
So they're also some tremendous tasting notes. It definitely opens up to maybe a bit more of a cherry kind of flavor. Mel says winter mixture boiled sweets.
yeah,
Good shout. Maybe
yeah,
fits where I was going with that kind of cherry berry
yeah, yeah.
type type
Uh,
thing. Yeah, sorry.
Apple citrus on the nose, marzipan, orange peel. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's definitely on the lighter side. I think a lot of people are getting kind of some sweet notes from it. But yeah, it's one that you can mix, you can drink neat. You could be playful with it if you really wanted. Stir
Mm.
it down, add a splash of coconut bitters, and then you've got like a kind of fruity, summery old fashioned. But yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah, it's funny you say it's because it's got a kind of a bitters freshly added to a cocktail. Uh,
Mm.
taste on the finish. It is quite spicy and quite a winter spice as well, kind of lots of clove.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, someone said marzipan in there, and that's a great marzipan, almond, orange peel. They're all, I think it would make a cracking old fashioned actually. This.
Yeah.
Tony says spicy Bakewell tart. Just was getting some licorice with sherbet lemon. David said this is softer rye than I'm used to. Definitely orange, possibly marmalade. Russ, with a drop of water, definitely the Bakewell tart. Brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. All right. What I'll do now, I'll just show you. So Adam Edwards is the brand ambassador for and marketing manager for Hillman Store in the US. He sent me a video explaining distillation at the distillery. The volume is a little bit quiet, so you might have to listen closely. But yeah, it's just a short, I think, 4-minute video just explaining distillation. Again, I've not been out to the distillery just yet. I don't think I'm important enough. Hopefully one day that I'll get there. But yeah, it's great to see a finished article in that sense. So I'll just play this video now for you.
Hi everybody, my name is Adam Edwards, National Brand Ambassador for Heaven's Door Whiskey. Just wanted to extend a welcome to Whiskey Shop members here to Pleasureville. This is a 160-acre campus in the heart of Henry County, Kentucky. That is bourbon land, where we're making bourbon. You can see behind me, we've got our 45-foot still, so this is an 18-inch in diameter still. We've got our mash tubs behind us. I think you're used to calling them mash tubs. We usually call them fermenters here in Kentucky. We've got those running 24 hours a day. We'll empty about 4 of them in a day. And we're going to get about 6,000 to 8,000 barrels out of this still in a year. Now, this still is the first run. So it's a column still. You know, that's pretty normal here in the U.S. Lots of American whiskey is done in a column still. A few people use pot stills, but we've noticed that the majority of people are using column stills. It's a higher volume, and you can get it a lot higher with less runs. So with a pot still, you're gonna have to keep putting it back in that pot still over and over and over to get it clean enough at a high level of distillation. With a column still, we've really got 2 runs. So we're entering at the top of the column still, all the way up there. That beer, as we call it, or the mash, is going to go into the top of that still, right below that first, you see this little silver band there, right below that first area. That's called the rectifying part of the still. So that's going to enter right below that. It's going to pass through about 18 plates on its way down while steam is coming from the bottom. That steam is going to lift up through that fermented liquid, the beer, and that distiller's beer is going to start to separate. And it's going to start to take that alcohol, those good alcohols, mostly ethanol, right to the top of that still, the rectifying part of the still. It will start to recondense and then fall back down. It's reflux, we call that reflux, and we're just cleaning up that liquid as much as possible. When it comes off of this still, we're going to have it to about 125 proof, which is strong, but it's not clean enough for us. So then we're going to put it right downstairs, and I think that, you know, during this video, if Daryl is doing what I think he's going to be doing, he'll probably be showing some of these shots that I'm going to throw in, that I'm going to be talking in here. What you're probably looking at right now is our doubler, so it's a secondary still, much shorter. We're going to take that 125 proof, what we call low wine or first run, throw it into that little, it almost looks like a pot still at that point, and we're going to redistill it and clean it up, get it up to about 128 proof. Very, very pure, no color to it, so it's completely, you know, what we call here in Kentucky white dog or white lightning, that clear distilling. We're going to proof it down to 120 proof. We're going to put it into our barrels. Now, to be straight American whiskey, so bourbon or straight American rye, it has to be aged in what the law says, virgin or one, you know, first use or unused charred oak vessels. I always love this, vessels or containers, not even barrels. We're going to use barrels, they're easier to roll around, right? We're going to throw them in there so it's charred on the inside. We usually use like a level 3 or level 4, what you call alligator char. Looks like alligator skin on the inside of that barrel. We're going to throw that, what we've proofed down to 120 proof, our entry proof, put that into the barrel, and we're going to let that age for anywhere between 5 years to, 10, 12, 15, 20. You max out right above that 20 mark. At that point, there's not much left in the barrel, if anything. So we're going to let that age, and then we're going to empty those barrels, and we're going to bring them down to bottle proof, put them in the bottle, and that's what you got in your hands right now. So again, thank you so much for joining. I hope you all have an awesome session tasting through this liquid. Hopefully Daryl can answer your questions, but if not, you want to shoot me a message, Daryl, you can give them my email. They can shoot message me out as well, and hopefully soon I'll be able to see all y'all in person. Cheers.
What a legend.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I didn't know. Well, I knew you said it was personalized. I didn't realize just how personalized. That's fantastic.
Yeah, he's
you knew your name,
American.
Daryl.
Yeah, he's very American. But yeah, absolute legend. I sent him this when we knew that we were going to do the tasting. He was actually on a business trip in Florida, and he said, "Send me an email with what you need." And yeah, he went and did it for me, and I got the videos last night. So yeah, fair play, and thank you, Adam. Very cool guy, and yeah, clearly loves what he does, and hopefully he gets to come over here or vice versa, because I'm sure he'd love to come to the whiskey shops and do some like barrel tops and tastings in store as well. So yeah, there's just a couple of videos there of the column still kind of doing its thing, and then the doubler again, like you said, almost looks like a small pot still, and that's kind of where we get in, like cleaning up the spirit ever so slightly. So yeah, just a quick overview of the site. I mean, a brand new distillery on 160 acres. He mentioned it was in a town called Pleasureville in Kentucky. Now, for whatever reason, when I think of Pleasureville, I do think of, sex swings or kind of something rude. It's in Amish territory. It's on the Bourbon Trail. Previously, the site was called 6 Mile Creek. And on site, it's all about looking at how they can be sustainable, looking towards the future. There's a grist mill on site. So in the future, they're going to be doing all of their own grain. They're looking at getting heritage grains, farming their own stuff, and really getting that grain to glass. I did have a quick call with America, and they said, there really is a challenge for them to become the greenest distillery in America, and that's no small feat. A lot of distilleries, have excess grain for mash feed, excess grain or excess mash going for cattle feed. It's about how can we go that a little bit further. So great little quote from Bob Dylan. Even if you paint your masterpiece, what will you do then? Obviously, you paint another masterpiece. So obviously, and that's simulated in the whiskey. When we try one, we've made a great whiskey. What do we do next? Make another good one. So we've tried the straight rye. I suppose the next thing is the double barrel. So again, I've got the kind of particulars on the screen for you to read, but so the double barrel. Now, I'm sure some of you are Bob Dylan fans, and being the artist he is, he doesn't do tasting notes like we do them as vanilla, pepper, spice, orange. He does them in moods and feelings. Of course he does, he's an artist. With this whiskey in particular, he wanted a whiskey that tasted like an old wooden structure. So imagine you're sitting in your sheds, you've got Times Are Changing playing, or Hurricane, there's a cobweb, you've got this dram of whiskey in front of you, and that's kind of the feeling, the emotion, the time of day that he wanted to set. So this is a blend of 2 bourbons and a rye, and it's finished in alligator char. Now, for those of you that don't know alligator char, I do have a cross section of barrel here. I do have these massive staves, but I had to cut them down because traveling around London with these on your backpack, people stop you because I wrap them up and they look like guns, I think. So I chopped them down and put them in my bag. This isn't from the distillery. It's incredibly difficult to get staves over from the US. So I purchased these off a friend of mine who worked at another distillery in London. But I use these more as a scratch and sniff element. But the idea being, when you char the inside of a barrel, it goes in 4 stages: level 1, 2, 3, and 4, 15-second increments between each one. When you get to level 4, 55 seconds, it's known as alligator char. The reason being, it splits the wood in the inside, and it looks like alligator scales. Now, this one isn't. This is probably level 2 or 3. But yeah, just to show you the inside of the barrel, really. So this whiskey is the only one out of the ones we're going to try today that have gone through the Lincoln County process. So this one has been mellowed through maple wood. I suppose the idea being that they didn't want it to be overly wooded. But this one is 50% ABV, so slightly higher. And I'm sure you guys are fully aware, alcohol is much like salt and pepper that you put in your fish and chips, like sugar or your soft drink. The more alcohol, the bigger the flavor. So what do you get on the nose, firstly, I suppose?
Yeah, well, while people are bringing in their taste notes there, just Alex has a question there on the second run on the still.
Yes.
Why go through the second still for such a little increase in alcohol percentage to then go and dilute it again?
I suppose it's more about, I mean, there's so much myth and distilling magic that happens through copper. You know, you hear those age-old stories. I can't remember what the brand was. As a Scotch distillery, they had a still and it had a big old dent in the side of it. Now, when they scaled up, they laser imaged that dent and put it in their new still because they believe it gave it some magic. And I suppose the same with this. It's just running it through copper, that little doubler, it's just going to soften some of the edges. I suppose it's more of a finesse rather than purely for distillation purposes, bringing it down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, the copper contact will strip out some of those kind of sulfuric and heavier notes, and
exactly,
it's definitely going to round out the whiskey a lot more, regardless of changed ABV. As you say, Ian says tasty. WH says hazelnut. David says super tropical, heavy notes. Russ says really maple on the nose, and then packs a real punch of flavor. Beautiful. Kevin says, I've been a Bob Dylan fan since the 1960s, and I love his image of a log cabin. I went there for I'm sorry. I went there with the first one, and this is even better. Oak with maple, sweet resin. So brilliant.
Yeah, I do think there's there's a time, mood, and occasion for every whiskey. And like I mentioned before, you can have one with your cereal in the morning. You can have one with your cheese sandwiches at lunch. And I do think this one's great for like a maybe the last barbecue of the season, September. You know, the sun's setting. There's a few embers in the fire pit and the barbecue, and you've just got a blanket around your shoulders, and I think that's this kind of whiskey that time for me. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyable, and I mean, all of the spirits that we're going to try today have won awards. I mean, pretty much every spirit has won an award, but this one's the most awarded out the core range, the ones we've tried so far. But yeah, I mean, I suppose double San Fran is probably one that a lot of people aspire to win at, and double gold San Fran. So it really is good juice in that sense.
You mentioned there that the sort of, you know, the idea that Dylan wanted to paint a log cabin. There's obviously, you know, the album I have behind me here, the Blood in the Tracks with Tangled Up in Blue, probably one of the greatest songs ever written. He was working with Norman Reuben, I think the painter was, and the idea was that you look at a painting and it captures past, present, and future, even though it's a still image, so it's multi-layered. And he wanted to create a song that was both existed in the past, present, and future, which is where Blood in the Tracks comes from. And I can see someone like with that kind of brain thinking that you can do that with the layers of flavor within a whiskey. But how much of I suppose my question is, that was a long way of getting around to it, how much is he actually involved in that kind of process in terms of tasting and selecting whiskey, or is it a bit of a gimmick?
Yeah, so do you know what, when I go to the on-trade, so the pubs and bars, I do a lot of sampling. I was at another whiskey brand, I won't mention which shop it was earlier, sampling. We don't name names here, but yeah, always mention the Bob Dylan thing last, because I want the juice to stand up on itself. And, 25-year-olds don't know who Bob Dylan is. Now, I did put in a video towards the end, and it's an interview with Marc Bushala. And he's very much, he's very much a part of the process. And again, I'll play the video. It's a slightly longer one, and it basically summarizing everything that we've gone through. But the idea is that he's an evolving artist, and he's never put his hand to a product. And I think it was his way of being a part of something like this. He's restless in that sense, but he's very much a part of the business. He does select the barrels. I won't name names again. There's a famous gin with a plain connotation, and I'm pretty sure some businesses will give shares to a celebrity to be the face of it. He's very much a co-founder in this business, so he's there at the start selecting stuff. But yeah, I appreciate there's a lot out there, and a lot of people are putting their name to whiskies and not necessarily having anything to do with it. But yeah, Bob likes a drink, so I'm told. Hopefully that makes sense.
I believe it. I don't know if you ever listened to it, but he did a thing a while back, about 10 years ago, called he had it was an NPR radio station, and it was actually older than that, probably the late 90s, early 2000s. But he stopped it after a while. It was like I can't remember the name of the radio station. I'm sure Kevin or someone on the chat will know. And when he first purchased or invested in Heaven's Door or whatever, he did one especially dedicated to songs about whiskey. It's phenomenal. Listen, I highly recommend people look it up. It's a lot of 90 kind of really old American folk songs and blues and jazz songs that reference whiskey. It's a phenomenal listen even if you're not into Dylan, if you're just into music and vibes. Definitely worth it. The Mela said, I struggle with on the nose with most whiskeys. Palate is where I find the flavors, getting orange, rind, chocolate, and then cigar smoke. It's more extra tasting notes from Mel. I don't know, Mel, I don't mean this, but you probably are well aware of this because you've come out with some cracking tasting notes in the past. But I find for nose tasting, if you taste with your mouth open as you nose, so most of your flavor you're getting through any food or drink you're consuming is actually coming from your nose. Even if you're consuming it orally, your tongue's a very limited organ in terms of taste. So you don't realize it, but your nasal palate is actually where the flavors are coming from when you get orange, rind, chocolate, or cigar smoke. So if you nose with your mouth open, having the mouth open allows the kind of airs to circulate at the back of your throat, and you really get all the flavors. So maybe you already knew that, Mel, but hopefully one person on this call, if one person on this call didn't know that, then it was worth repeating. Brilliant. Darryl, what's up next?
Yeah, so next, where are we going? So we're going to the Decade Series 1 now. So this is where we're going into the drink like serious whiskey territory. The Decade Series is part of an annual release of 10-year whiskies. This is the Series 1. Series 2 has been released now, but it's a 10-year whiskey, a 10-year Tennessee bourbon or straight bourbon. I've not been privy to the mash bill on this. Now, on the side of the bottle, it does allude that there's 20% rye, but I don't know the rest of it. Now, it's 50% again, so nice and big, bold flavors. 10 years in a barrel for bourbon is going to be quite mature. So you might get some leather, possibly, bitter chocolate on the palate. But I still think there's some bright notes on the nose. So let's see what you think. Anyone struggling to open some of the drams, or am I just losing my grip and getting old?
I was actually thinking the same thing, Mel. I don't know. They've obviously done these ones extra tight. But yeah, apologies about that. I'll feed that back to the bottling hall.
Or maybe you've had a few whiskeys. I don't know.
Believe it, on the very, very first one, I had to use my teeth. So yeah,
okay.
It definitely is they are tougher than usual. My apologies.
So if you notice, the branding is slightly different. to the ones previous. I've just seen that.
Yeah, I've had to get
I've had
pliers
to get the pliers smell. If you notice, the branding's ever slightly different. And the reason being is, so this bottle, this one in particular, the Decade Series 1, is a 750 ml bottle, which is quite unusual for the UK. We have 700 ml bottles. In the US, they do 750. Now, sometimes we don't do imports, but for the most part, in Europe and UK, it's 700 mils. But this particular branding is different because as new businesses do come and go, branding changes as well. So this will be the newer branding coming into the UK. This is already around in the States at the moment, and we won't see it till towards Christmas time. We'll get the new branding in. The reason being is they just wanted to kind of premiumize the bottle a little bit, make the design a little bit more discreet, and thinner glass, so more sustainable as well. But yeah, definitely leather on the nose, comforting. That's nice.
Yeah, or maybe he meant comforter. We
Oh.
don't. No, I'm joking. No, he definitely meant comforting. Sorry, it was a bad joke again. It's interesting. We got some good feedback on the bottle actually in our offices when we were doing these packs together. Most people said they prefer the old design.
Do they? Oh,
that's almost always the way.
You can never win. You can never win. But yeah, the other bottles you've got in the office, they're 700 ml. This one's 750. So, but yeah, I mean, phenomenal. Like, this is grown up liquid. This is, I think, bourbon at some of its best. I'm obviously biased here, but yeah, I think it's really good juice. This is one that you could sit neat, you know, classic simple cocktails with. I mean, add a drop of sweet vermouth to this, and that's luxury in a glass. Absolutely delicious. I mean, I talk about booze a lot. I used to run cocktail bars, and people always ask me, you know, how should I mix this drink, this whiskey, this whatever? And it's highly subjective. You know, 20 years ago, we weren't allowed to add water to whiskey, and we are now. We're allowed to add ice if you want. Obviously, if you add ice, it's going to numb flavors, but slow dilution's nice over a sipping drink. You know, in Japan, they drink whiskey soda as kind of their default highball. I mean, I love whiskey and soda water, so I really encourage people to drink it the way they like it. And we're all different, and we get the best out of it that way, I think.
Yeah, we got some great tasting notes coming in there. Oh, sorry, I'll let you fire away. What?
No, just I was reading. Chris Friend seems a very complex nose. Christmas mincemeat, mince pies. I love that. Absolutely love it. No, I think it's absolutely fantastic. So we're going to move on to the last one now, if you're ready for it.
The last drink. We'll quickly just go through the prices of these. I think maybe some people are still sitting away there on the chat. There's also a couple of comments there. Bob says, loves this one, getting a lovely fruity tang and creamy palate. Jeff says 10-year-old is grown up whiskey, best so far. I get a lot of like caramel or kind of like freshly made, like caramelized sugar on the nose. I think it's an extraordinary whiskey.
Yeah.
Just on the pricings there. 1 second, I had them in front of me and I lost the page. So the straight rye is £74 on our website. So with the discount code, that's coming in at 62.90. What was the next one? Was the double
barrel.
Double barrel was £90. So I don't know if anyone can do maths quicker than I can add this to the basket on the website and see what comes up. But that would be coming in at, with the discount, £76.50. And then the Heaven's Door 10-year-old. So this one, actually, what I meant to ask you while I bring that up there, Darryl, was this comes up as a decade series. So is this in part of a new range, or how's that going to work? It's how I've kind of seen it referred to in a few quarters.
Yeah, so this is the first of the decade series. Series 2 has the decade series 2 just been released, and We're just getting it to the UK. We're about a year behind in terms of like whiskies. So they'll release in America. By the time they're shipped, they sit in a warehouse in I think in the Netherlands for a little bit before they come to the UK. So there's a bit of a time lag, but Series 2 will be coming to the UK, if not very soon. And that's a 10-year rye whiskey. So absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, and then Series 3, I don't know what it is yet, but hopefully we'll have some information soon. But yeah, part of an annual release. So we also have a series called the Bootleg Series. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to sample these today. They retail roughly about the £600 mark. They're on allocation only. So the Bootleg Series has had 5 releases so far. The last one was a 15-year bourbon finished in Spanish vermouth cask. Now, I tried that at a whiskey event in Germany about a month ago, and it was phenomenal. Honestly, again, it's I think it was a double gold or a gold winner at San Fran. The complexity on it was out of this world, and I mean, I love vermouth. I'm a vermouth drinker through and through. So anything with like a kind of that sweet dried fruit kind of finish, oh, it's absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, as much maybe next time if Luke invites me back, we'll try and get some of the we'll get some of the Bootleg Series. They come in these beautiful leather wallets as well. And they've just come down to 700 ml. They used to be 750, so it brings the price point down a little bit as well.
Well, that does sound exciting. Oh, you'd definitely be welcome back on if you bring one of those. Yeah, Martin says lots of interesting spices on that for me. Angostura bitters, oddly. Kevin says written before about ice cream and whiskey. You certainly have, Kevin, and quite elegantly. Generally vanilla, but this would go well over honeycomb ice cream. Tony C says 10-year-old creamy, buttery fudge with a hefty sprinkle of clove. And just on the price, £98 we're retailing the 10-year-old at, which means at a discount to be 83.30.
Which is a steal, is an absolute steal. Yeah, that's really good. I might even buy a bottle at that price.
Very good. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Darryl. You were going to say something.
No, I think that's phenomenal. That's really good. I mean, price point wise, that's amazing. That's phenomenal. £88 for that. Yeah, really good. I've seen it go for a lot more. So, Russ, best of a bunch. Okay.
Marvelous.
Oh, still got some of the redbreast barrel finish.
I have a funny story about that, actually. I think that's a phenomenal whiskey. I'm a huge redbreast fan. I bought one of these for my dad, these redbreast ones, at a time when they were gold dust in Ireland, and I'll give them to my dad because he passed on his love to Dylan for me, and he got drunk one night and drank them all in old fashions, and I was so upset with him. So yeah, what a waste.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal whiskey. Again, it's an older SKU. It's not made anymore. There's limited bottles in the UK. If you do a quick internet search, you might find some knocking around. Again, similar price point, probably about the £100 mark. But as a distributor, we've never had any, and it was distributed before we took the brand on in the UK. But yeah, if you get your hands on some, it's phenomenal. And I go to many Irish bars. And I've seen a few bottles on back bars, and it's always a joy to see. I think it's that perfect mixture of like America meets Ireland in that sense. But yeah, it's a banger. So if you do see it, always worth a tipple.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. I will just get on to the next slide now. Oh, again, this is. I don't want to blow my own trumpet too much. We've won multiple awards everywhere. Like I mentioned earlier, when I talk about liquids and spirits, they're all good. There's no bad liquid that hits your supermarket shelf, but sometimes it's great to benchmark yourself against other people. And yeah, we've done phenomenal. And I mentioned especially when I'm talking to 25-year-old bar managers who don't know who Bob Dylan is, which blows my mind. liquid forward, to show them kind of a massive plethora of awards is just phenomenal. So yeah, credit to the team, the blenders, distiller, and obviously Marc Bushala and Bob Dylan, because they've done some great stuff. I did a whiskey and cigar tasting at the Soho Whiskey Club, and we got through a fair drop of whiskey that night. And yeah, people weirdly asked to see awards, and it's just nice to show them what we've done, what we've created. So for those that might have seen the last one and thought this is not for me, now this is Stolen X Rock and Rye. Now it's part of a category known as Rock and Rye. I was reading an article the other day. The Rock and Rye category, I think, is still the third biggest spirits category in Pennsylvania. It's weird. A few Rock and Ryes have made it to the UK before. Essentially, the story is, or the heritage is, where before Prohibition, before the old-fashioned, rye whiskey was predominant whiskey in the US. It was rough, and they didn't know how to make it very well. Same story as the Old Tom gin, if you've ever heard that in London. They didn't know how to make gin very well, so you used to add sugar to it. And the same with this. So the rye whiskey was rough. They used to add rock candy or rock sugar to it to make it sweeter. So you get this idea of a rock and rye. And this is before the old-fashioned, before Prohibition. Prohibition killed rye whiskey industry. Bourbon took over. Now, this particular brand is owned by Marc Bushala's business or company. So the same people that own Heaven's Door. It's called Stolen X. It actually started in New Zealand, weirdly. Two lads loved the booze industry. They wanted to become a part of it. So they're importing American rye whiskey. They're adding raw organic honey and orange peel. So some of the best honey in the world comes from New Zealand. This is basically an old-fashioned in a bottle. It is a whiskey liqueur, 35% ABV. So some liqueur, I mean, a lot of liqueurs sit a lot lower, so 15, 20%. So at 35%, I don't feel shortchanged. Now, this is going to be sweet. This is dessert. This is something, again, it might not be for everyone, but it's essentially an old-fashioned in a bottle. Now, again, let me know what you think, guys. I mean, I'm not precious. If you don't like it, it's okay. I'm going to pour myself some.
It's really interesting. Something on the nose I can't quite place. I love I didn't realize that about Pennsylvania. I love the rock and rye. So who'd have thought Taylor Swift, Joe Biden, and rock and rye whiskey, or rock and rye liqueur. Claire and Ian have had to break out the pliers for this one, apparently. So apologies, guys. This is interesting feedback, though. You know, this is good. I mean, I think people have said this before, but it was a while ago, so it's good to know that this is still an issue. Chris Brennan said, "I think my wife will like this, but too like Southern Comfort for me." It's interesting, actually. Chris mentioned Southern Comfort there. Southern Comfort was originally a whiskey liqueur, and then in the 80s it switched to being a kind of white spirit. You know, it was a flavored spirit that didn't actually contain any whiskey. And I think when Buffalo Trace Sazerac purchased it a couple of years ago, they went back to the base being an aged spirit. So it's interesting, Chris's comparison there. I can see where he's going. I think it's a bit different for me, but I can see maybe something like, I think they do a Southern Black. That's a bit more bourbony. So maybe that's a bit more like this. David says, need ice and maybe a slice of fruit. Russ says, I like it. Very banana on the nose. Couldn't drink a lot of it, but a nice dessert type drink. Claire Neen says, we are getting it as a cocktail tasting. We're enjoying it as a cocktail tasting for this one. Well, I suppose that's what it's meant for, isn't it, Darryl?
Yeah. I mean, the way we pitch this, there's no pretension in the brand at all. It literally says on the back, this or that. So over ices are a shot. It's meant for, I suppose, I mean, when I take it to trade into the pubs and bars, it's meant for high attrition venues or Americana themed venues. It's simple, simplicity at its finest, and people can shot it if they want to. It's great straight out of the freezer or the fridge, or over ice as you know, a cheats version of an old fashioned. There's a hotel in Manchester that pours it for their big events, and they do old fashions for 200 people. Just pour it over ice, garnish it, and then you've got a cocktail there. I appreciate it's not for everyone. It is sweet. I suppose that's what it's supposed to be in that sense. But yeah, it's fun. There's no pretension in it. It's sweet, bourbony or sweet whiskey rye goodness, which I love. And again, I'm quite fortunate to have tried some really nice whiskies, and I've got a bottle of Louis Therese on my back shelf. I'm really fortunate to try some really nice stuff, but sometimes less is more. And when I've had a long day at work and it's hot, sometimes I just want a stolen eggs over rice. That's just me. Maybe that's the Essex in me. I'm just an Essex boy at heart.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And Kevin says, I appreciate this, but my palate has gone less sweet as I've gotten older, so it's a bit too sweet now. Used to love Southern Comfort. Maybe one to get in for when guests visit, Kevin.
Now, whilst you're shotting or enjoying the last of your whiskey, I do have an interview here with Marc Bushala. He's pretty much gone through a lot of the information we've gone through today. If we've got time, I'll just play it. And I mean, yeah, he's a great guy, and it's good to hear the words from his mouth. So I'll play it. And yeah, it's an opportunity to enjoy your whiskey, and then we'll do an outro. So cheers.
Sounds like a plan. I'll drop the discount code in the chat after this video, folks.
My name is Marc Bushala. I'm president and CEO of Heaven's Door Spirits and Spirit Investment Partners. Well, I got into spirits in 2010, launched a brand called Angel's Envy. We kind of hit the market at the right time with a unique brand and a really good juice, and did extremely well. So let's do that again. I had read that Bob Dylan filed a trademark application for a whiskey called Bootleg, and I thought it was really interesting that he would want to own anything, particularly launch a whiskey brand. I was fascinated just thinking about what that would be. After thinking about it for a little while, we thought having a singular whiskey expression for somebody like Dylan, who's so prolific and diverse in his music, just didn't seem to make sense. And so we thought maybe an evolving repertoire collection, or catalog, if you will, of whiskeys was more on brand. And in conversations with Bob, that kind of evolved into having whiskeys that told stories in their own way. What got us really excited was looking at his visual art. And as a lifelong Dylan fan, I was amazed to learn that he was a painter and a sculptor. So we thought this positioning of the perfect blending of art and craft could be a really fun place to play. So using Bob's paintings and his metalwork as the inspiration for the bottle designs, we mocked these up and they just stood out, they popped, they were absolutely beautiful, both the metalwork and the paintings. So much so we couldn't decide which we liked better. So we thought that we would use the metalworks for our regular releases, and then a very high-end limited release once a year that we call the Bootleg series, which are porcelain bottles with Bob's paintings on them. We have our own mash bill produced for us by a couple different distillers, and you know when you taste it if it's great. The harder part is how do you take that great liquid and then do something to it that makes it better, particularly when you're starting with a great core product. You don't want to bastardize it, but you do want to give it some nuance and some character. So as we're constantly going through different finishes and blending, we started to think, what else can we do that's really different and unique? There's a Dylan quote that I like. He said, "What do you do when you finish your masterpiece? You paint another." And that's just kind of this relentless pursuit of discovery that I think sums Bob up. So this is new news for whiskey drinkers out there, but we've been working on building our own distillery for some time. We concluded a deal recently where we acquired a distillery in a town called Pleasureville, Kentucky. It's on the Bourbon Trail between Lexington and Louisville. And this is like part American history tour, part craft distillery. It's absolutely stunning. 160 acres of rolling hills. There's a grist mill to grind grain, 2 aquifers, so we're pulling natural limestone water out of the ground, geothermal energy. This is one of the most green distilleries anywhere in the country. We're buying additional farmland where we'll have our own herd of buffalo. So the spent grains that when we're done, we can feed to our own herd. So it's very sustainable and very renewable. We're growing our own heirloom grains, so truly grain to glass, It's a very exciting proposition. We plan to open the distillery probably late spring of next year. So the distillery is purely distillery, and we have a church in downtown Louisville that we're renovating now that will be our brand experience, and it'll have some of Bob's visual artwork, his paintings and his sculptures there on display. We'll curate other exhibits by other artists. We hope to have the largest selection of American whiskey anywhere. Rather than just feature our own, this is really going to be the high church of bourbon. So we're out procuring every unique and rare bottle we can. This will look like nothing compared to what we're building in our church right now. We'll have a small performance space in the church, a full restaurant, and then the art gallery. This is not a license deal, it's not a sponsorship deal. This is Bob's brand and something that we wanted to do, and we're here to help him realize that vision. And so it's interesting when people ask, is he involved? Why did he do a whiskey? And as we think about like, what is his persona as we answer that question, it's like, well, why does he paint? Why is he sculpting? He has a boxing ring in his home. The man tours 100 days a year in his 80s. So what drives that creative passion to constantly reinvent yourself and push yourself? That's who Bob is, and I think that we draw inspiration from that, and I think it comes through in the work that we're doing.
So that's that. But yeah, nice little interview. I mean, we pretty much touched on most of the points throughout it. I did want to do a cop out and just play that at the start and just say nothing through the whole thing. So I thought I'd put it at the end.
Marvelous. No, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing
My
that.
name's Marc.
So
Yeah.
got some interesting comments in there. A couple of questions before I go through people's winners, and I'll put the code in while you're answering them. We've got Rusted, quick question. You mentioned coconut bitters earlier. Where can I buy that? A quick Google only shows it available in the US. Where'd you get your coconut bitters?
So I've only had it in the US, but you can make your own very easily. So basically all bitters are a really heavily infused spirit. So get some coconut, crack them open, some desiccated coconut, get some neutral alcohol like a vodka, add like a back spice, so maybe a little bit of nutmeg, cinnamon, and then just loads of coconut. Let it infuse for a couple of days and taste test as you go. But yeah, that's all bitters are, really heavily infused spirits. So yeah, you can make your own very easily, just buy a vodka, a really neutral vodka to do it. The more flavors you add, the more complexity, but think of like cooking, you know, things that go together. Coconut goes very well with tropical flavors, other tropical flavors. So maybe add a little bit of pineapple in there, mango for a little bit of sweetness, and then just, yeah, strain it out and put it in a dash bottle. I quite luckily have a huge collection of Fee Brothers bitters. Unfortunately, they don't do a coconut one, but yeah, I experiment quite a lot and do DIY old fashions and just let people pick their own bitters when I have people over, and different sugar sauces. I've got a cupboard below me full of different sugar sauces. It's like sugar syrup, sugar cane syrup, molasses syrup, you know, I've got everything. But yeah, if you can't find one online, make one yourself. It's so easy.
Yeah, and also you can get sort of approximate bitters as well. I think like some of the Brazilian bitters and some of the bitterment stuff has like elements of coconut in them if they're not explicitly coconut bitters. We've got some, so the discount code, folks, is WS24HD. That'll give you 15% off all the whiskeys we tried tonight. In terms of, I've had a quick look through there, Daryl. I think it's no surprise the 10-year-old seems to have ran away with it. Probably one of the most, we've actually been discussing a lot recently on our tastings that a few of the brands have had sort of toss-ups at the end, and there's been a couple of different ones, and it's hard to see a clear winner. No disrespect to the whiskey we tried tonight. Apart from Ian, I think everyone has gone for the oh well, Neil and Ian. So two people went for the double barrel, which is another excellent whiskey, but overall it's the 10-year-old, and I think no surprise there. As you say, for £98 before discount, it's a bit of a steal. Mel said, as Chris Friend says, the missus might like it. This is in reference to the stolen. Would be worried she might start trying my collection. I suppose that's the other thing we didn't mention in the Stolen is the idea that it would be an entry level, a bit like Southern Comfort, you know, that kind of entry level
Yeah, gateway.
into whiskey.
Yeah, gateway whiskey in that sense.
Gateway, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, similar to the gin category, you know, opening up with flavored gin, it got people that didn't like gin into gin in that sense. So, yeah, it's a fantastic gateway whiskey if you're new to it or want someone to try it. I mean, or even if you are making old fashions at home and you want something drier, you know, have a shot of this and a shot of that, and then you're done, right? Again, it's that sweet element, so you don't have to add sugar on top. So yeah, it's all about finding your own balance in that way. But like I noticed, not many people favored the rye. The rye, you shouldn't have a favorite child, but the rye is my favorite child. I love it. I don't know why. I just there's something about it that really scratches my itch. Absolutely love it. But yeah, horses for courses. That's
Exactly.
Exactly.
No, definitely. Well, listen, folks, thank you, Daryl, very much for joining us and facilitating this tasting. Really fantastic way to spend the 4th of July. We didn't mention the election or Independence Day much, so you know, maybe that's a testament to the whiskey keeping us chatting. No, it's been really excellent. If anyone has any questions that we haven't really gotten around to, or you're watching the recording and there's something you'd like to ask, drop me a message and I'll pass it on to Darren if I can't answer it myself, or one of your colleagues, Darren, will get it answered.
Yeah.
It'd be great to have you back on to taste that Bushmills range, Darren, or not Bushmills, Jesus, the bootleg range. Sorry,
the bootleg, 100%. Yeah, the bootleg I'd love to taste, or even if we do a varying of this and try one of the new decade series and some bootleg. Obviously, would love to do some Irish whiskey with you as well, with McConnell's and Dingle at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly, I mean, it'd be really good to do something around Dingle with someone who's a soft spot. I don't know if you can see there's 3 or 4 Dingles there behind me, the original releases from the distillery. So
or maybe we'll do an Irish versus American. We'll play off that.
Sounds like
3
a plan.
3.
Marvelous. Well, listen, thank you for your time, and thank you everyone else for joining. We'll have another tasting on sale, I'm hoping next Tuesday, and that'll be on the 18th of July. So do keep an eye on the usual channels for that one going on sale. Great to see you again, Kevin, jumping on again, and all the familiar faces, David, Jeff, Chris, Mel. Thank you for coming back, and all the others whose name I can't see right now. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you again soon. Thanks, Darryl.
Thank you. See you later. Toodaloo. Bye.
Bye.